First of all, welcome to all participants to the 5th Good After COVID-19 webinar. Again, we are very honored to have a lot of good speakers that are joining us and sharing their thoughts and ideas on the impact of COVID-19, but especially on thoughts on how to move forward and the good things that we can see and realize that are happening in the world that might function as inspiration in the middle of all of this. As I mentioned, we have people from all over the world, which is impressive, and it is nice that it is catching the attention. And to us, it only means that apparently we are doing things here and we are able to inspire others that might be struggling during this time quite a bit. So that of course makes us very happy that we are able to support them during these times. For the program, I'll go through some of the practicalities to begin with, and then we have Karme, who will give a small opening speech. After that, we move on to Professor Eero Vaara, who will talk about open strategy. Then we have Heikki Martela, who will talk a bit about this hybrid model in the working surrounding. And then we have Robin Lindahl, who will start and kick off our panel discussion, where we will go through some of these topics and maybe take in also in the panel discussion some of your thoughts and some of your ideas or things that you're curious about. And we will end the webinar 3:30 Finnish time, and we will work to our best ability to stick to this time schedule with respect to people maybe still having to work or it being very late somewhere around Asia or some very early in the States. So we will do our best to stay to this schedule. And as usual, the webinar will be recorded. So if you know people who have been very interested but are missing it, that's okay. We will publish it later on. So, and more information about that will be posted after the webinar. Without further ado, I'll give the word to Karme.
Yes, and dear all, thank you very much, Tina, and dear all, welcome to the meeting. And it's my honor to open the 5th Good After COVID Finland webinar here today. And there is no doubt that these webinars have been a success. We have had great variety of speakers and themes in these meetings. And so also this time. There has been much discussion about the hybrid leadership. It is estimated that this will be a new way of leadership in future. Often heard words are inclusion, transparency, self-direction, sustainability, happiness, trust, and company culture. Some years ago at the Nordic Management Consulting Institutes, we started to think about the good in Nordic leadership. We have realized that the same words that are used in describing hybrid leadership describe the Nordic leadership. And that's why naturally we asked, do Nordic leaders have a competitive edge in this case? Is there something we can teach from the Nordic to the world? Today we will hear the theory and practice of open strategy, Nordic leadership by people who know this in theory and practice. So with these words, I open the meeting and give the floor to the first speaker.
It is our honor to have Eero Vaara as our first speaker talking about open strategy. And even though I know Eero Vaara very well, I'm going to allow him to introduce himself. Eero, I'll stop sharing the screen so that you can take over the screen.
Yeah, well, thank you first of all, Tina and Kim, for setting this up. And it's, I think, just a fantastic idea to have this webinar series. And this is more the first time I'm participating. Maybe some of you have been here for all the sessions, but I think it's just a terrific idea that we should be looking beyond the current crisis, because that's important for so many reasons. But not only do that, but also try to learn from what we have been experiencing, and then try to well, nothing more or less than trying to make the world a better place, or build better organizations and try to perhaps turn these challenges into positive learning experiences. So my name is Eero Vaara. It's a great honor and pleasure to be here. So my brief introduction is going to be 2 sentences. I'm nowadays at Saïd Business School. I'm a professor in organizations and impact, and Saïd Business School is the business school of the University of Oxford. So that's where I am, but actually I'm not there. I'm here, wherever here is. Well, here is actually now in Munkkiniemi. So I'm very much also Finn, and still also linked with, have still this very nice affiliation with the Aalto University. But I've been for quite some time been interested in strategic decision making and strategic change, including all kinds of topics. But one of them has become increasingly important, and that's strategy work. So to put it briefly, strategy work is something we used to call strategic planning. But I'm going to use this term strategy work, which seems to be much more in sync with today's challenges and what's happening in organizations. And the plan for today's session, and I'll keep my keynote very brief, is to basically first say that what we are seeing, and the COVID-19 crisis has really highlighted this, is nothing more or less than a paradigm shift in strategy work, all the way we approach or conceptualize as well as practice strategy work in organizations. So that's number one. Number two, I'm going to say just a few words about our findings. That's ongoing research on strategy work in organizations right now as they are experiencing the COVID-19 crisis. And then after that, I can then jump on to this issue of how to then orchestrate this new kind of strategy work, which I'm going to call 3.0, which is indeed characterized by all those things you, Kim, were mentioning, in the sense of that being more engaging, participatory, but also increasingly there are pressures to be agile and to act upon the ideas. So that's the plan, and I hope that, you know, whenever you have questions, you'll just post them, and otherwise follow Tina's great instructions so we can take them as they come or later on. So without any further delay, let me try to do a mission impossible. It's a mission impossible because I'm trying to do in about 2.5 minutes the history of strategy work as I see it. Well, in all honesty, I think strategy has been with us, or that's like the other side of coin of organizations. So it's been with us for probably tens of thousands of years, but it kind of got going in terms of people focusing on such things when with the Chinese philosophers and development of military ideas and strategies and so forth. But what I here mean by strategy work is the more deliberate work in organizations to formulate organizational strategies and to enact upon them. And there the history really starts only after the Second World War. And I'll start with a version that could be called 0.1, which was very much characterized by these heroic decision makers and leaders. And some of you might recognize the person in the picture who was actually, there should be a prize if someone, you know, immediately recognizes this person, but I'll make it easy for you. This is Juuso Valdén, who used to be the CEO and many other things, CEO of the United Paper Mills. So he was the Finnish equivalent of many other heroes of that time, especially the 1950s, where companies and corporations were growing and becoming increasingly bigger and international and engaged in all kinds of strategic projects. But what we usually see or think about as strategic planning got going in the 1960s, early 1960s, and you know, it's been a success story thereafter. So consultants, big corporate leaders, setting examples, academics joining, this kind of got going from the East Coast in the USA, but it's become something that has taken over the whole world in the sense that whether it's called strategic planning or not, we have that going on in all parts of the world in different sectors and organizations. But then people realize that, hey, it's not enough to have these really cool plans. Plans are not enough, but people need to know about those. So what I'm trying to say here is that the 1.0 version was very much of the old-fashioned view that, you know, strategy is something that top managers focus on, and it's oftentimes even secretive, confidential, is about competitive advantage and so forth. So it's a problem if you share that with many people. Now 2.0 emerged because of this realization that actually those ideas have to be shared so that people will be aware of those. And the, you know, organizations have also learned the hard way that the more you engage people, the more you both get great ideas, but also increasingly their commitment to the strategic ideas and goals. But what I'm really getting at here is that it doesn't stop here. In a way, I can stop here by saying that what we're experiencing now is this increasing or this next level of engagement, which is spreading also outside the organizational boundaries, and the new kinds of methods and technologies we have also allow for really widespread participation. I'm going to go into those in a moment. For instance, this idea of open strategy. But at the same time, and this is really something that we've seen with the COVID-19 crisis, is that there's been this increasing need for agility and action. So I put the question mark here, which kind of notes that, hey, what we are seeing in front of us is something that is different from the past, or at least it's something that complements the previous approaches. But what it is, we don't yet fully know, or that it may be taking different forms in different organizations. And that's probably the best learning point from this brief presentation, that it indeed should be different depending on your own organization and its challenges. Okay, so just to highlight two features from this idea of 3.0. So it's increasingly engaging people within and also oftentimes beyond organizational boundaries. And secondly, unlike 2.0, it's also supposed to be agile and actually happening oftentimes in distributed ways, in more or less autonomous types of strategy work processes taking place in different parts of organizations. So far, so good. So this is like the ideal of Nordic management, as Kim put it, or what we would like the world to be like, right? So we have people involved in these processes, and then it's also happening, you know, when it's needed. But it's not easy. And this is the story of COVID-19, basically. Without spending altogether too much time on this, this comes from a big research program called The Future of Work that I've been leading actually in Aalto University. And as a part of that, we've been also focusing on strategy work in a number of different kinds of organizations. So what are we learning? Well, in part, these are things that we kind of know. And I'm just going to mention that obviously these times have emphasized the uncertainty and anxiety, as well as ambiguity about the causes and consequences of changes in companies or other organizations and around them. Also, it has made clear that oftentimes within the same company organization, also the effects are different, meaning that it's hard to develop collective shared understanding of those. Clearly, in these kind of situations, it's not only so that you have like one scenario about the future, but many. And so you have these dilemmas, as you always have in strategy work, concerning the shorter term or the longer term concerns or aspirations, and the fact that they may oftentimes be contradictory. So what I'm trying to spell out that precisely in times like this, there's also this big risk that especially more agile forms of strategy work that I'm otherwise, you know, the biggest supporter of might be risky, in the sense that if it leads like, you know, just quick and dirty analysis and decisions and actions that are not really carefully thought about and grounded in reasoning. There's also the problem of politicization, as well as what I think is probably the worst phenomenon that we're experiencing. Well, not the worst, but on top of what's happening with COVID-19, in the sense that there's this layer of people in society on the whole, but also within organizations, unfortunately, not oftentimes analytically looking for the causes or consequences of changes, but more like engaging in the blame game. So there are many other points I could be making. That's just a snapshot to say that what we are really seeing is that strategy work is very much needed under these circumstances, but at the same time is particularly challenging. And two things emerge out of this. It's really difficult to create the shared understanding. And at the same time, there's this big issue of how to orchestrate strategy work in these conditions. And remember, the new type of strategy work is different from the previous models in the sense that it's increasingly autonomous, it's happening in different parts of organizations, and it's not only restricted to the formal strategy processes. So therefore, how to lead, or I'm using the term orchestrate, is particularly pertinent. Okay, so what are the solutions? There are many solutions. I'm not claiming that these are the only solutions, the best solutions even, but I'll just mention three. One is the term that has really motivated this session, open strategy. An open strategy is, I love the term, I really love the term because it's analogous to open innovation and many other good things that come with the idea of openness. And what openness specifically means in this context is an emphasis on inclusion. Well, inclusion is the same as engagement and participation in my mind, important. And then transparency, also allowing people to see what's going on, and that being also oftentimes a prerequisite for widespread participation. So what are the examples? I'm just going to throw one at you. My favorite example, Wikimedia. Actually, I've nowadays got the opportunity to observe, or at least learn about strategy work in Wikimedia. And this has been studied by others, but what's been fantastic in this social movements efforts is that they've really taken the idea of participation seriously, and in many ways lived up to the idea that's also shown, of course, on wiki pages, that in a way, the ideal being that anyone who wants to participate can participate, that becoming close to the idea of wiki pages, that anyone within certain parameters can, as we know, edit the content of wiki pages. Why I'm picking up this example also, that it's almost like 180 degrees departure or deviation from the previous or the traditional way of thinking, which is that, okay, top managers or board members, those are the people who author, write, and oftentimes sign and seal the strategic plans, which might be put into the company safe, which actually used to be a practice a long time ago, no longer, luckily. Whereas here with open strategies, the opposite. Anyone can be involved, but of course, orchestrating these processes is challenging. My second example, and I'm not spending too much time on this, these are meant as examples to you guys. And you may or may not like these. And let's see if we have time to talk about these as examples and compare those with others. Narrative or storytelling approach. There's one organization in particular that I've been following in the past years, and this is the city of Espoo. And credit to where it belongs. This is the mayor, Jukka Mäkelä, who really started this new way of organizing, orchestrating strategy work in the city of Espoo, based on the idea that strategy is a narrative. And what I've particularly appreciated is this idea that there's not only this one, although that's the central part and really important, one organization-wide narrative that they call Espoo story, but over the years, they have in different ways also invited and asked for other stakeholders, both within, that's different areas and units, to develop their own narratives or stories, as well as increasingly also their collaboration partners to develop their versions of collaboration with Espoo. So I love this approach. Personally, I think strategies are really narratives. If we think about strategies as constructions of the future, and if we think about narratives as ways in which we connect the past, the present, and the future. And the final example, and then I'll shut up, is no bullshit. Now, this also goes nicely to what Kim was mentioning earlier. And actually, we talked about this also when preparing for this session. So that there's more and more, and there are different terms for this. And I'm really happy about this trend, that there are more and more examples of organizations that are really flat, that are really based on the principles of self-organizing or self-management or whatever you want to call this. And some of the prime examples come from the game developer world. Angry Birds, Rovio is what I picked up as a picture, but the example really comes from Future Play, which is a fantastic company. And Yami Elias is the founder and CEO of the company, and he has really pushed this idea of no bullshit, which is at the heart of this thinking that, you know, it's not that the top managers of any others should be bothering too much the work, also strategy work of those people who really know better. In their case, the tribes or the teams who are developing new products and services and testing those and deciding as to what to invest in the future. Hence the term no bullshit. But what I want to highlight, this cool example, is that it's also very different if we compare this to the Wikimedia example, where this idea of participation and transparency means that it's very much orchestrated, the very clear structures for people to be engaged and provide their inputs into the process. Whereas here, it's very much autonomous and it's very much up to the teams as to how to do this. Okay, so what have I been trying to say? I guess what I've been trying to say is that not least because of the COVID-19 crisis, it's becoming increasingly clear that we need new approaches to strategy work. And I've given you 3 examples, and there are many others. And this means that it's not only the content of the strategies, that is what decisions or actions are taken, but also the processes as to how people are working on the strategies that matter. And I'll stop here. Thank you.
Thank you, Eero. As always, it is nice when you are challenging us and challenging the assumptions on how things are and how they're maybe supposed to be. And it is very likely that in the future we will need even more of these very different ways. So this 180 turns on working how we've been doing things in the past. Welcome.
Right. Thank you. Hello, everybody, wherever you are. And this is the way how it goes nowadays. Wherever you are, when you talk to somebody, you don't know where they are. And when you manage organizations, you don't know where the people are. That's the new truth. And the question is how to manage the workplaces then when the situation is like this. This is my topic more or less today, trying to give you some hints how to plan for the future related to the workplaces in your organizations. And within Martela, where my background mainly is, we have made quite a lot of studies about these things during the last 8 months, because everything started 8 months ago. And until then, everything was normal, and mid-March, all of a sudden, all the offices were empty, and nobody knew what to do. And the situation is that 8 months later, quite many of us, when you talk to CEOs, managers, leaders in organizations, they don't know today either what to do when the COVID-19 period is over, and how to plan for the future with considering the workplaces and how to work in practice. And But I hope I have some ideas for you to think about, considering how to work in the how to plan for the office work for the future. Here, back to happy Mondays. Whenever that happens, we don't know yet. Maybe next year or the year after, but it can be happier at least already in the time in between, before everything is settled with the virus. We can divide this planning work, how to plan for the workplaces, in considering the urgency of the situation in the three different phases, and urgent, midterm, and long term. And urgent has happened already in quite many organizations, but there are tons of organizations who haven't made any changes yet, physical changes to their workplaces. And the change what has happened, that most of the people are working from distance, from their homes, and that means that completely a different work. What to do with the workplace then? What to do with the offices? There is some medicine. How can we work in the offices? How is it practically possible? And what to do? There are quick fixes of taking care of social distancing, for example, closing every other workplace, for example, with a tape, with black and yellow tape, or different kind of simple tools how to organize the workplace physically, so that you don't kind of you can keep this safe distances. And also cleaning instructions and using all these kind of things with the cleaning, and also taking care of your own hands and masks and so on. These kind of practical things make it already happen that several organizations have partly come back to their offices, not wholly, but partly, so that they have administrated so that there are phases that certain parts of the organizations can work in this week, and next week some other parties come into the office, and so on. Different kind of patterns and rules depending on the organization and depending on how they work and so on, which is based on their own kind of conclusions how to do. And of course, companies like Martela can give advice and help with the quick fixes for the organizations. And what has happened during this 8 months period is also that a lot of learning by individuals, learning by organizations, learning by like companies like Martela has taken place in a very short period. It didn't take very long time before people were quite okay and familiar with Teams and all kinds of Zoom and all the tools how they work, and could make the rules also how to work in teamwork with the new technical tools. And earlier it was when you participated in a meeting with Teams or by video from distance, it was always a question mark, somewhat a question mark. Okay, do you really need to be distant, and are we getting the techniques work, and so on. But today it's a situation that that's not an issue anymore. If somebody says, I believe also that we believe that in the future, when this is over, the situation is over, if somebody says that I'm working from home this today and participating through Teams to our management meeting, it's not going to be an issue. It's normal daily life, and we know how it works, and we know technicalities and so on, and the rules, and that's the learning what happens after we have made the first fixes, and this is the learning period for the future. One day this is going to be over, and we are able to come back to the offices. People are able to meet more and more, and social distance is probably not an issue anymore. And when that day comes, what to do then? How the world has changed in that situation? That's the main question then. We can manage somehow the period in between, but what is the real future after COVID-19? But there has been a revolution in between. How to manage that? I'll try to give you some ideas what to do then. First, some studies. We have done quite a lot of studies in the Nordics, in Finland, Sweden, Norway, and Denmark about how people are now, how people have experienced these 8 months in their work. Working distant, mostly this is concentrated on the distant working issues. And as read in the newspapers, but probably quite many of us have been seeing that it's been working quite well, actually. It has not been a catastrophe. It has been working quite well, especially in the beginning, first 3, 4, 5 months, people were saying that, yeah, this is fine, I'll continue forever like this. But now, after 8 months, the situation has somewhat changed. It's not the paradise anymore. And there are issues which need to be solved in this new situation. But what people are happy with, according to our studies, is, for example, concentration in work is easier at home. 55% said in the spring that concentration is okay. There is no issues in concentrating on my work at home. And of course, there are the issues when you are try to concentrate at home. 13% of the people say that they have kids at the home at the same time, which probably can disturb. So that, but still, quite many of the people are saying that concentration is okay, because in offices, concentration is normally the major issue, that people cannot concentrate enough. Then the communication is also surprisingly good results. In spring, 47%, now 52% say already that they are happy with the communication, how the communication works within the organization. And that's probably mainly due to the technical tools which we have learned to use, as talked earlier. Now in spring 47, autumn 52, so we are learning on the way. So communication is improving. When you need to talk to your boss, you can talk to your boss and its communication works and so on. Or if you need to communicate with your team, it's possible technically and it works and you can hear and so on. That works. That works fine. And meeting routines are developing. Then two other areas, two other important areas which are not working that well, according to the studies. Only 24% of the people say that chilling out is what we call chilling out part of the work. It is part of the work is working. Meaning, what means chilling out? Breakouts, taking breaks, and recovery part, and drinking coffee with your colleagues, and so on. These kind of things, they don't work at all, more or less. When we say 24% are saying that it works, but the rest is saying that it's not working. And the second thing, major thing, is collaboration. In spring, 24% of people said that collaboration is fine, and now only 19% of the people say that collaboration is working. And then we can ask also, what is when we talk about development and innovation, for example, what are the important parts in innovation? Probably collaboration has a lot to do with that, and that's not working in this situation. So the kind of summarizing this, that the feeling is that a lot of things work surprisingly well, working from distance, but in the short term, but that is more in the short term. But in the long term, we need these breakouts and chilling out and collaboration parts of the work which are necessary. And now, for example, new results are showing that people are feeling more stressed of the situation, because the people are working long days and longer days at home than they do in the office, and they try to, for example, do dishes or things like that. At the same time, they are participating in a Teams meeting like this. So these things are important for how to plan for the future. Some other studies which we have made are shown in this, illustrated in this picture, and this is showing different periods from left, pre-pandemic lockdown period, opening of offices, and post-pandemic period, and forecasting how does it look like the occupancy rate of different areas. And if you look at, I try to explain it a little more. If you look at the left, the highest number, more than 50%, is I think it's brown, that the light brown or something like that. The color is talking about desk occupancy. The desk occupancy normally in offices, according to studies by Rapal, has been a little above 50%. Meeting rooms is the next one. Meeting room occupancy has been a little below 50%. So that roughly 50% of the desks and 50% of the meeting rooms normally are empty in all offices in average, which is surprisingly a lot in a sense. And then remote work was done according to studies less than 20% before the pandemic period. Now things have changed radically, as we know. Lockdown came in March, and remote work has been increasing radically, and so that clearly above 50% of the people in white collar work are at least partly working remote, and many of them more or less completely. And the occupancy rates for the meeting rooms and the desks in offices are very low levels, on 10% or so, depending on the office. How is it going to, how is that going to develop then the future? It's quite obvious. We don't have the clear answers for these, but we have indirect answers, making studies, asking the customers, asking the people and managers what they believe they are going to do in the future. And one thing is that remote work is the most interesting, probably. Is that the remote work, which we now say that is in a very high level at the moment when we are in a lockdown or opening of offices period, but in the future it's going to decrease, but still stay on a clearly higher level than it was earlier. And that's quite obvious. There are many studies which say that this is going to be the future. Remote work is here to stay. And the question is the remote work here to stay? Is it for everybody and always, or how does it work? That's the main question. And then when we look at the desks and meeting rooms, which are more or less empty today, they are going back to higher levels, but they are not going to as high levels as they used to be 8 months ago. So that the levels are still clearly lower than they were earlier. And the situation is going to be very different compared to what it was earlier. How can we manage and design interiors, and how can people work in that kind of a situation? There are scenarios. Uncertain future, as Eero said, is one very significant factor today when planning for the future, and these are some scenarios where we illustrate different types of offices for the future. And we say space optimization here in the picture means that the space optimization is less office square meters, and space expansion that we are increasing our office square meters, and more remote working or more at the office are the two dimensions. And, what options does that give for us? For example, this lower left corner means that we have bigger offices and still people working at home, hollow offices with empty desks, like huge open offices and very little people. I believe that's quite obvious. That's not going to be the future. Then quite a lot of people say that the office of the future is going to be a meeting place, which we see in this top left corner, that people come to offices just to meet each other, and that's it, and then they go back to home to do their work. And that's also one option. And that means that the offices would need to be quite small. And then also that doesn't fulfill the needs that people have to meet each other, have a sense of community and unofficial discussions and all these kind of things which people want according to studies, what the people want to have, and that doesn't give help enough for that kind of a situation. But that's of course an opportunity or possibility for the future. Plan office as a meeting place. Then the next option is that we have more office space and more people in the office, and big spaces that we go back more or less to the office rooms, that we have big rooms and big spaces for people, and we take care of the distance and in that sense kind of come back to the 70s or 80s in the offices. That's more expensive, and that doesn't really fulfill the requirements of what people want to, how people want to work today. And this hybrid working, what we call, is what we believe is the kind of the direction where companies are going in the future, is that the type of office where collaboration and empathy are supported for the people. And in that situation, people are also, it means that it's more freedom for the people to choose where they work where you want. You can work in the office, you can work at your home, you can work at the coffee shop, or you can work in office hotels, wherever it's most practical and the best place to work. And then the tools and the management and the premises adapt to those situations, so that you can work in different places and you can really optimize the place where you work and for your individual and group needs. And that means that quite a lot of flexibility is required also for the future offices then. That you need to be able to concentrate, you need to be able to collaborate, you need to be able to communicate and even chill out in your office of the future. And one way to solve this flexibility issue is that you don't only have your fixed office, but you change your office quite frequently, because you have different needs. Which is not like a rental periods typically are 5 years or 8 years or 10 years, but so you fix your office for 5 years or 10 years, but you don't know how you're going to work in 2 years. That's the dilemma. And how to solve that is that you can rent your office. You can rent your office interiors, so that you agree that you have a rental period of X years or X months, and it's updated, measured with sensors, measures with and the people are going to be interviewed and so on, so that you know when the demand is changing, the offices are changed, but you don't own the office. You can sell the old office furniture in the beginning, and then it's a rental. You can sell to Martela, and so that we can take care of your old office furniture, sell it partly in an outlet in a responsible way, and then we start a new period when it can be adjusted all the time according to the needs, and with a shorter time frame and with the flexibility. And that's what we believe, that this pandemic has opened new opportunities for us in our business, and so that this negative impact of pandemic of the demand is in the future going to change, and the demand is changing, that it gives us opportunities. So that's how we see it, and that's how we vision how the future is going to be. And it's more that now the revolution which has been going on in the workplace is slowly. The Covid-19 period is kind of triggering it now, that now its revolution is happening quite fast, and it's going to be changed forever. And so that this is really an opportunity, and I believe it's for the good for the organizations and organizations also, that it's people are more happy with this kind of a new situation when it's well planned, when all is over. And some words still about this. How does it impact the management and leadership in this kind of organization, and to be a subordinate when organizations are more distant than they have been earlier. Earlier it was this kind of a trust factor that quite many of the bosses were thinking about, that okay, I trust my organization, especially when I see them, and every day managing by walking around or whatever you call it, that you see your organization, discuss and see that they are working. Now it's gone, so it's, you cannot do it anymore. During the last eight months, how did it work? Actually, it worked quite well. People are not lazy; they are working with, probably too much. That's more of the issue. But that's one thing that you kind of are relieved from the trust problem, so that you can just starting points that the trust is there, and that's one thing how that impacts the management. And according to the studies what we have made with our target group in the Nordic countries, is that the worst results in this considering the leadership, is that leadership issues have been difficult. Communication, collaboration type of issues have been an issue, and work community has been an issue. So that in Finnish, yhteisöllisyys, work community, you don't get that easily when working distant. And how to solve that? We can solve the physical workplaces, but we need also somewhat a new type of management in these kind of environments and in this new situation. They need to kind of fit together. I strongly believe that this kind of a Nordic minimal leadership is something for the future for the companies, which is already there, but it's going to be increasing also, that people are more measured, not being in the office, but even more measured on the results, achievements, and so on, and people can concentrate really on those issues. So that and also example of some areas which are very good in these are a lot of kind of startup organizations or young IT organization of today, which we see where the management is, which is talked about, but these self-managing organizations, and those principles are kind of I believe speeding up in other organizations too, that it's going to be more self-driven organization. It fits well together with the physical organization and the new type of management. My own theory, more or less, workplaces of the future, in the near future, are going to change, and some impacts on the management also. Thank you very much.
So I think that there were a lot of really good points made here, also with how we as humans are changing and how our needs are changing. So valuable, and I myself find this very interesting to consider the way and where you are working. And the changes and also the possibilities and opportunities that it brings with it, but also of course the challenges. I know many who have said that when they have family at home, that it's not always that easy. Great. Without further ado, we have our next speaker who will also function as the initiator for our panel discussion. We have Robin Lindahl, who will give some thoughts on what he has heard, but also some of his own experience and some of his own thoughts on COVID. And then we will after that move into the panel discussion. Robin, go ahead.
Thank you, Tina. Yeah, also on my behalf, so It's nice to be here and talk about this topic, and very timely topic. And of course, own experience from the COVID situation and working remotely. I think first of all, if you think about the market, so Taaleri's company, it's a financial institution, and we have 3 different business areas. So we are in wealth management, we are an insurance company, and we are also in private equity type of investments. And there we are specializing on renewable energy. And for us, it's been of course a very interesting but also challenging time. In the first quarter in March, the markets of course reacted very heavily, and there was a big downturn on the stock market as well as on the interest rate and debt market. So the bond market also crashed in the first quarter. We've seen a nice recovery after that during the remaining after the second quarter, and second and third quarter there's been a nice recovery. But one thing that I see, that there's also a change in investors' behavior and what investors are looking for at the moment. So we see a big increase in the interest in sustainable investments and also impact investments. So when it comes to renewable energy and other things that has a positive impact on society or the environment. So that's a good trend. And we believe that after COVID and post-COVID, we'll see an increase in this type of investments as well. But just to say a few words about my own experience of the COVID, so and working through the COVID situation, there has been clearly the kind of day-to-day operational things have been working very well and even more effectively, I would say, that during normal times, because people are very focused. And I think what we heard both from Heikki and also Eero's presentations, I think people use their time effectively and probably also work even harder, even though they are doing it from home. And this kind of the operational day-to-day work is going very well, and that's very effective, I think, throughout the COVID. But looking at then work that needs more collaboration. So if we think about strategy work or development work and developing new things and new ideas, this has been a little bit more challenging in this situation, where people are working remotely, and you don't get the normally strategy work is so that you get people in a room, you get flipboards, you get post-it notes, and people are brainstorming, and you get people into a brainstorming mode. And this has been more challenging in the remote working environment, and that kind of requires new ways to engage and to work, so that you can create that kind of environment even though people don't meet face to face. So that has been kind of I think there has been a need to change working methods in a way, and maybe during the springtime you could see that this was more difficult for people, but people adapt very quickly. And I think that we see already that people have adapted to remote working, and during the autumn time also engaging more collaboratively through Teams or Zoom or other tools has been more effective. And what comes to Heikki's and Eero's presentations, I think if we start with Eero's presentation, my own taking of this is that the world is changing faster and faster, and we have kind of a small crisis that can come from time to time, and therefore the strategy work is really a continuous process. It requires us to be working constantly on different scenarios of what could be the outcome of our environment, the industry, mega trends, what is changing in a way. same time, I think strategy work is also becoming more collaborative, and that's my own experience as well, that you engage suppliers, you engage customers in addition to your own employees, and then different analysts and consultants helping you to work through the strategy. So I think this kind of open strategy, I definitely believe in that myself as well. On the same time, if you look at investors, how they look at companies, they would like companies to be very clear, have a clear vision, clear strategy, which is simple enough that everybody understands it. And I think these two things is something that we will, and I would like to hear Eero's comments on that as well, how he sees that we combine this thing, that we have this open strategy work, but same time we would need to be clearer and clearer, very, very clear in our messages towards investors, our own employees as well, of the strategic direction, the goals, and the priorities that we are making. So that would be interesting to maybe hear Eero's comments on.
Okay, can I take it immediately?
Yes.
Okay, great. I first of all want to say that I completely agree. So we are on the same page. We didn't rehearse this, but it's like total resonance. And this is, I think, one of the challenges, because it's exactly like that, especially those companies and organizations that for instance are listed companies. They have to have these clear, compelling, short, funny, elaborate, detailed ways of saying what they will be focusing on, which speak to investors and other stakeholders, for instance, future employees. And that is clearly a different direction from the practice of allowing different teams to work on their own strategic challenges, sometimes, as you well described, with experts or with their customers or other stakeholders. So I think the reality will be more and more of this, what's the word, stratification of strategy work, or that we will see like different forms of strategy work coexisting. That's my thinking.
Thank you, Eero. And then maybe if we think about the workplace and to Heikki's presentation, so my own experience is that we went from, we had almost always more than 80% of our workforce in the office before COVID. And then we went to total lockdown and more or less 90% of the people working remotely. Currently, we have around 80% of our workforce working remotely. So, and I think that remote work is there to stay. And my own view would be even more than what you showed. Of course, that was a study of many different companies probably, and so. But the need for office work is more for the collaborative work, meetings, this kind of brainstorming, and as you said, also the social needs. So I think it will be a radical change also to how offices look like, and also the tools that we have. But it would be interesting to hear maybe, Heikki, your views of how you think that. How radical do you think the change will be in what kind of offices we need to have? Today we have in our office we have still dedicated chairs and tables for everyone. So and we are kind of thinking of what kind of needs do we have, and how do we change our office to fit the need after COVID, where we still think then that maybe 40-50% could be remote work, and then all this collaborative work would be happening in the office, and of course customer meetings will be here, and therefore I think we at least think that there is a need, fairly radical need for the future office.
Yeah, I agree that there is a very radical need, and I believe in quite radical change in that, so that it's more getting to the direction that people are not having in offices. They are not having their dedicated rooms and or dedicated workplaces either. Maybe some people are having also, depending on the demands, what they do and how often and so on, but still dedicated workplaces are going to be a lot less in the future, so that when you come to the office, it looks different. There are the workplaces, but you can book them online, for example, a workplace for you for this morning or this afternoon or Friday or so on. And then you use that workplace for that period of time, but not outside that period. And one thing is that makes also that you need less square meters in your office for workplaces. And that's quite significant saving at the same time. But what you need is the areas for collaboration, communication, chilling out, that type of areas, which mean a lot more sofas, for example, and that type of a different kind of meeting areas. Traditionally, meeting rooms have been quite big meeting rooms with board type of meeting rooms or management team type of meeting rooms. But today and tomorrow, you need a lot more small meeting rooms for 2 people, 3 people, 4 informal meetings, short meetings, phone booth type of meeting rooms where 2 or 4 people can meet also. That type of things, which is answers your need of the day, but you don't book them for the week or for all the time. So it's more efficient also in that sense, and it's more convenient. You can choose your place, best place, what you need for at the moment, and that type of thinking. And what does it mean? How does it look like in the office then? It doesn't look like a traditional office, and it's going to look more like home. It's not like home exactly, but it's going to be more home-like kind of, so that type more sofas and more relaxed places and that kind of thing. So that and the colors and the visuality is going to be more important than earlier. This is my view on that.
Very good.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm going to include a bit more the people now as well. So we have a good discussion, and I'm not going to interrupt it too much. But we also have, for the ones that are familiar with this, we're going to use Menti. And I'll walk you through how it works. But basically on your phone or then on your computer, if you want to, you can go to menti.com, a web page. And when you go there, it's going to ask you for a number code that you can see up on the screen. And the number code is 9554351. And there's going to be some questions. So the first question that we have here is, when you hear open strategy, what do you think of? And you will have the option of entering words or very short phrases. And we can see them as they appear, so as you enter things here. Speaking of that note, we actually have some questions here as well, and I'm gonna, as I know that Eero likes difficult questions, I'm gonna start by hitting you with a hard one. I'm happy I'm just moderating the conversation. So when we talk about open strategy and inclusion and having many people involved in it, the question is that who makes the decisions and who takes responsibility, for example, for the implementation, either if it fails or if it succeeds. Eero, do you want to start then? Then we could take Robin after that, and then we could take Heikki's comments.
Well, glad to take this. I kind of saw the question, or one formulation of the question earlier. I tried to type in some thoughts into that, but here's what I think. I think it's a great question because, you know, with this trend towards openness, inclusion and transparency, I think that's a great trend. But at the same time, it complicates matters precisely from this perspective as to who is in charge of strategy work. And we know that if no one is in charge, or if no one emerges as an owner of a strategy process, or no one gets activated, then it's not going to happen, or that then it's less organized and it's more like ad hoc discussion. So that's one side of it, that this is the big challenge that is more cumbersome than in the previous models. The other side of it is that in principle, this also is great because it allows for people to emerge as strategists. So basically anyone can then take up these roles within, I guess, some parameters or reason.
Thank you. How does this sound, Robin and Heikki?
Yeah, I think it sounds good. And as I said earlier, I'm a believer in open strategy and collaborative strategy kind of process. Also, when it comes to engaging different stakeholders within the company, everything from employees to the board and to working together with the management. I think as Heikki, as Eero said as well, I think the important is then who orchestrates this and how do we make it happen in a not a totally chaotic way, but to still keep the threads in your hands so that you can orchestrate it in the right way. I think that will be important, and I feel that as a CEO, I feel that that is my responsibility. It's one of my most important tasks is the strategy process, because in the end it's a tool for me to help me and the management to lead the company forward. So I think you cannot delegate it, but of course you can have people working together with you on it. And what I said earlier, I think it's very much then that from an open strategy creation or process, then you need to pull it together, and then you need to be able to kind of compile the strategy, prioritize things, and pull it together, and then make it very clear and transparent. And then of course strategy work always, it's all about implementation. How do we actually get it deployed in a way in the organization and implemented so that every employee in the company understands and knows their role in the implementation of the strategy.
Thank you. How about Heikki? Do you have a short comment?
As Eero and Robin said, also this ownership, that it's very important still to have the ownership. That without ownership, it's difficult to believe that it's going to work out well. But still, the participation, transparency. My mind, I get two words which are I think about collaboration. And collaboration, a lot of collaboration is needed, which is good. And of course, I think about the workplaces you need for that. But okay, then the other thing is that customer view. How can you take care of the customer view? And this sounds for my ears that okay, with this type of open strategy process, you can get the customer view than in kind of a closed type of strategy processes.
Great. I'm going to launch our following questions. So the ones that are on the Menti side, it should now refresh for you, and you have the opportunity of answering the question, who would you include in strategy work? And this is partly what you were already discussing when we were talking about decision making, but also this part that who would you include, or maybe it can be turned around, that is there someone that should be excluded? And this partly goes into, if we want to make it really complicated again, well, we can talk about how many should be included. So is it actually everyone, or do we have a magic number that if it's 35, it becomes too many, but 34 is perfect? So as this again evolves around strategy, Eero, would you mind starting? Heikki could comment, and then we'll take a final comment from Robin.
So I like this discussion a whole lot because it's actually combining many of the key themes that have been from the start planned, but we're going deeper and deeper. I like the practical questions also in terms of who does it, who owns the process, who orchestrates, going to the detail of how many, for instance, like you are asking. Of course, there is no one number to this, but we do realize that these are the kinds of practical choices that people have to make. So we all understand if it's a nice group of 10 people around the table, for instance, face-to-face or Zoom, it's a much easier to connect with people and allow them to participate. If it's a question of reaching hundreds of people, then of course it should be done otherwise. If it's a question of trying to reach sometimes thousands of people, as in some of the examples I was mentioning, or even tens of thousands of people, of course, then it's a different ballgame, which requires technological solutions. Now, that's great, but of course, they also limit then the nature of participation. So if there's a set of questions that you are answering, or if it's a particular type of platform, and if you can only, for instance, voice your view on certain matters, then of course, that has a big impact, both enabling and constraining participation.
Thank you. Heikki?
Yeah, I was thinking about this, who would I include in the strategy work? It depends on the situation. As I understand, Eero is also saying that, for example, this year we have been experiencing more or less a crisis situation. In March, April, how many people can you have time to involve in that kind of a situation when you need to make rapid decisions and actions? So in that crisis situation is probably a smaller group, and then when you start to develop and it's more long term and you have some time for it, then it's bigger groups. So that makes a difference.
Robin?
Yeah, I think to add maybe on the previous comments, I agree with, of course, those, but in specifically for our strategy work, it's also, industry analysts and kind of certain consultants that, especially if we are looking at entering possibly some new areas of investments or so where we don't have the internal expertise. So then it's important, of course, to bring in the right kind of expertise, because we cannot be experts of every field ourselves, but as a company that offers investments into a very wide range of investment alternatives, of course, it's important that we bring in the right kind of expertise into the process. So, of course, our own employees, we work very tightly with our management team as well as our external board. So we have on our external board, we have, of course, the representation from many different industries as well. And so I think those are, but customers and suppliers, key suppliers are, of course, important as well, as we are living in a very fast and rapidly moving technology world where you need to adapt your kind of own tools to fit the future. It's also important, I think, to think about the digitalization or technology enhancement that you need to take into account in your strategy work. So it depends very much on the situation, on the time where we are living. So strategy work, of course, in most companies you do it once a year, but not every year you make big decisions or big strategic changes in the direction of your strategy. But especially when you are in a situation where you need to make them, then it's more important, of course, that you have a broad input into your strategy to make sure that you are making the right kind of strategic changes in the direction of the company. And then some years it might be more fine-tuning in your strategy work, and there of course you don't need then to have maybe as broad input into the process.
Thank you. I like this part where it says your bank. And that partly relates to one question that we got from here. In uncertain environments, how can you communicate your strategy, intentions so well that the investors can understand it and evaluate your company correctly? At the same time, when I'll allow you some time to think about that I'm going to also put up this one, that which places have you been working from, just because we're slightly curious. Should we start with Eero again on this, and then we could take, no, actually we start with Robin, because this kind of like goes in a bit to what you're doing, and then we'll take Eero, and then we'll take Heikki.
So on this question that is now on the screen, or the previous that you showed?
This one on how you can communicate your strategy.
Okay, yes, sorry. Well, I think for, this is part of our industry also, of course, because we are bringing new investment opportunities all the time to our customers. So, of course, we need to make, every time we bring some new investment type or new funds that we want to launch, we need to make, of course, that work in our own process of making sure that it's clear what is the investment all about, what's the opportunities, what are the risks, and it's important that you are very transparent on that. So of course, trying to simplify but not oversimplify the material in a way. So I think that's important. And of course, requirements vary a lot. So if you need to go and sell a new investment opportunity to a tier 1 institution, so if it's one of the big pension funds or something else, of course it will have it's more demanding and they require a lot more documentation. But the same type of work is of course needed in all of these cases. But the detail, maybe the level of detail, you varies depending on your target group. And same goes, of course, for our own banking. So if we are to raise a new bond or get a new loan from the bank, of course, you need to open up your whole business case, your forecast in a transparent way, both opportunities and risks, because it's important, of course, that it's a balanced view that you can present.
Thank you. Eero, do you want to go next?
I can just briefly add, again, saying that I really kind of completely agree that it depends on the nature of business and the situation, and also the target group or the audience, obviously, as to how to communicate what's important, what not. There are many challenges here. I think it's also a question of when to communicate. Some of the strategizing may be needed before there's a crystallization of an overall message. Also, another thing, sorry if I'm complicating things, is that this is a great question and a challenge in times like COVID-19, where it seems that people do have to prepare for alternative futures or alternative scenarios. So I do get that this might be behind the question as well. How can you kind of pick one or consistently pursue one message if indeed you, in actual fact, in your strategy work, have to prepare for multiple scenarios?
Thank you. And Heikki?
Actually, I have only one comment to add, which came from Eero's comment, that if you really don't know what you want to say, be honest. I think that's a good good way to do it. If you have several scenarios for the future, then it's good to say that you have several scenarios for the future. You don't know which you are taking or which is the most probable future. So in that sense, and especially this year, this brings to the mind that it's good to be honest.
Thank you. And the following question relates slightly to what we can see here. I'm worried about this do not dare to say, but it's okay as well. There was a question that was directed to Heikki, and Eero and Robin can shortly comment to it, but how about data safety if you choose to work from wherever? In their opinion, it is a big issue to solve. Have you, Heikki, heard about this, or do you have any concerns in relation to this?
Data safety was the question.
Yes,
yeah.
So data safety if people choose to work wherever.
Yeah, that certainly is an issue in this work where you want kind of our principle, and not being a data safety specialist, I cannot give you a technical answer, but that's something you need to kind of take care of. And from the beginning, that the data safety is taken all locations and situations where you work from. Data safety needs to be taken care of depending on the needs, what type of kind of safety requirements your organization is having, and there are probably good specialists on that field also, and big organization and distributed organizations normally are quite good at that. A special question is in this situation is also that when video meetings is still relatively new, and we have tons of new tools for these kind of meetings, and some of them are better and some of them are worse with the safety. I don't want to say any names and brand names in this situation. I'm not sure if I remember them correctly, but there are really differences if you have important meetings with confidential information. Make sure that your kind of video tools are meeting the requirements.
Thank you. A short comment from Eero and Robin.
Real short, I'm not really an expert. I can see that this thing emerges. Probably there are technological solutions for all kinds of distributed networks and ways in which those can be secure. I'm sure that the ideal or what people should be doing might be different from what they're actually doing or what they would prefer doing. So, and I cannot say that I would have anything else to say except that academic organizations are really bad at this.
Management. Yeah, I think there's a big need to take into use, of course, different secure mails, and also to make sure that the company databases are also access to them from a remote location. You need to have different kind of ways to have a protection on them. So I think that's I think this is an area where, of course, now IT specialists and IT security companies are working a lot on, and we have also done quite a lot internally on that side, because I think we have very sensitive customer data, and of course the data protection, and after recent events in the healthcare in Finland, of course, I think everybody is even more aware of this. So I think, but it requires a lot of work. I don't think that Finnish companies are any better than anywhere else at the moment. So it's a very serious issue, and requires also quite a lot of extra work, and I just encourage people to contact companies that are experts in that area, and because there are solutions.
Yes, and we have had some people that are more into the IT part, so this question has been partly discussed there, but maybe not so frankly, and having people in cafeterias working, and maybe not necessarily the data security as such, but the audience that is around might not always be completely as well in control in the same way as you have in the office or when you're at home. I like the comments that are coming here as well, and this is probably one thing that we've been touching upon during all of these 3 webinars, and it's been touched upon today as well, this Nordic leadership and which things are there. I am sorry, I'm slightly going to wrap the whole thing up because we are closing up to 3:30. This conversation is very interesting, and I think that we could go on easily for an hour still, and have many interesting things that we would stumble across and have questions around. The thing I want to make all of you aware of is that the Global Good After COVID-19 organization is having 2 seminars still before the end of the year. One will be next week, and the following will be around mid of December. And one of them will be on education. So what type of education is needed, and how do we work with the education as they have moved virtual as well. And this is also considering that we have a hybrid model in the organizations. If we can have students and other at a young age get more familiar and customized with this, it might also support them moving into this type of a world when they move into organizations. And the other one is on the economic system, and what sort of challenges we have there, and is there hope, is there light at the end of the tunnel. So if you have time, please visit their webpage and sign up for those as well. And for the Finland part, we are committed to this, and there are still a lot of really interesting topics to discuss. And I think that we're going to have to include some of our speakers that have been helping us throughout this year with these topics and revisit them. And we are considering having a big fishbowl with all of them to put all of these ideas together. But that will need still some planning. But in January, February, we aim to have the following one. And we will, before the end of the year, put out some information on the following webinars and events on this topic. And as usual, feel free to contact us at any time with any questions or any suggestions or needs or ideas or inspiring examples. We're always eager to hear from you, because we are trying to not only help ourselves but help others as well. And one thing that we want to wrap up with from this conversation is this notion of that has been very clear here, that we cannot necessarily we can change the direction of the wind, but as I know that we have, for example, Heikki here, who is very keen in sailing, and so we thought that what you have with sailing is that you adjust your sails, and during these times it seemed to be something that is needed to be done, and maybe the open strategy and this flexibility in offices is something that is needed. So maybe this could be a takeaway from all of these leadership sessions that we've had. I'm going to give the possibility to all of you to give a final comment. We'll start with Eero, then we'll take Heikki, and then we'll take Robin for final comments.
My final comment is, first of all, thank you, Tina. Thank you for putting all this together. Thank you to all others. It's been a pleasure. And I think that the themes really fit nicely together. And I'm eagerly waiting for the next steps also in terms of hearing where this theme of Nordic management and leadership will lead us to.
Yeah, the same from my side. So thank you. It was good discussion. On Nordic leadership, I would say that yes, it's it's an open collaborative leadership way, and it builds on strong integrity. And I think that this gives the Nordic leadership a good reputation in the world. And I think it can be a competitive advantage as well for us.
And Heikki.
Yes, yeah, I really believe this competitive advantage issue also, that it can give us a competitive advantage, and in the way, agile way we operate in the Nordics. And one thing is, one takeaway is also that there are always opportunities in situations like where we are today.
Agreed. There are always good things happening, even how bad the situation gets. A great and big thank you to all of the speakers, and of course a big thank you to all of the participants. Without the participants, these events wouldn't make a lot of sense. And again, very valuable insights, very good ways of disrupting the maybe old habits that we have and start questioning. Some of them might be useful in the future, but we also need to look at new ways of working and new ways of being and acting. And I think that we have again got some valuable insights and valuable tools to do that. So without keeping you longer, a big thank you, and we hope that this adjusting the sails will be something that brings you all the way to the end of January, when we can again keep inspiring each other. So a big thank you to the speakers, a big thank you to the audience.